And Joel, transitioning onto some of your incredible music, why did you and Jackson Browne start working together?
Well, we didn't start working together, I actually was on to Jackson at the very beginning of his career. My wife and I, after we left
But
work,
what do you see that attracts you? You see something special in this individual, that he's going to be extraordinary.
That's what I'm going to tell you. We came down from the mountains because after we were in Portland, after the bust, we came back to LA for a while. And then a friend of mine started a leather shop up in Washington, up in Seattle. So we went up there, and we were up there for a while with the leather shop. Then we ended up in the Cascade Mountains for a couple of years in a little cabin by the Stillaquamish River. And we really, wintertime, when up there, no utilities, everything slows down, It's like hibernation, really, I mean, a lot of time to think. No place to play music, no radio, no record player, no utilities. But anyways, we were there for 2 years. It really settled us in. We really got focused. We got focused on our relationship. We conceived our first child up there. We came back down to California, and we hadn't heard any music in 2 or 3 years. So we decided we got to go hear some music. So we checked the newspaper, and Joni Mitchell was playing at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles. And the opening act was a guy named Jackson Browne. Well, we thought, well, he must be a R&B singer, with a name like Jackson Browne. It just sounded like, probably a soul singer. And we got to the show, and we were pleasantly surprised when he came out, just with a guitar. He just blew us away. His songs were so down to earth and so personal. It was just sort of songwriting like I'd never heard before. And I had already been writing songs for a few years, but I kind of hated my stuff at that point of the game. It was like I had emulated so many people that everything I did was part of somebody else. And I've learned since then to follow Woody Guthrie's philosophy, which is that it's better to fail at being yourself than to succeed at being somebody else. And so Jackson was doing that. He was writing songs and just being himself doing it. So I guess what happened when I heard him, he kind of turned a key in the lock for me as a songwriter. And shortly after that is when I decided that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a songwriter. So I spent the next 20-30 years working on that. So that's kind of how Jackson turned the key in the lock for me. We actually met many years later.
Did he remember that show?
I don't know. I think he probably remembers that show. We actually met about several months later because he played a show in a smaller venue called McCabe's Guitar Store that we decided to go see him play at in Los Angeles the following year, the beginning of 1973. So my first daughter was maybe 2 or 3 months old, and we took her to that concert. My wife held her on her lap while we watched the show, and the opening act was a guy named Jack Tempchin. Now that's a name you might not recognize, but you would recognize the songs he wrote, because he wrote Already Gone for the Eagles. He also wrote Peaceful Easy Feeling. He wrote You Belong to the City with Glenn Frey. All of Glenn Frey's songs on his solo albums were co-written with Jack. And he also wrote Slow Dancin' for Johnny Rivers. So this guy's a big hit songwriter. And when we went to see him, Peaceful Easy Feeling was already on the radio along with Take It Easy. So we kind of discovered Jack. And then I discovered a few months later that he was pretty much a neighbor of mine. He lived close to where I lived and ran an open stage at a guitar store in Encinitas, California called the Blue Ridge Guitar Store. So I started as the beginning to my songwriting career, going over to the Blue Ridge Guitar Store and trying out the 4 or 5 or 6 songs that I had written at that point. And the rest of my repertoire was basically Woody Guthrie covers.